Good evening and welcome to KTN Weekend Prime. My name is Edith Kimani. As you've seen from the highlights, quite a number of things prepared for you this evening. We'll also be dealing with the issue of security or insecurity, if you like, in your weekly favorite checkpoint. That's coming your way shortly, but right now, let's have a look at the stories we prepared for you, beginning with that story from Pangani. A man was killed in an explosion in Nairobi's Pangani area while reportedly assembling an improvised explosive device. 3 of his accomplices escaped from the scene soon after the explosion. Now, this comes as a grenade was discovered under a preacher's table in a Lamu church.
A man in his early 20s died after an improvised explosive device he was assembling exploded at Nairobi's Pangani area. The explosion occurred on the first floor of a building that also hosts a madrasa on the ground floor. Residents say the blast was deafening, causing cracks on the walls of the 4-story building. There were fears the impact would have been dire if the madrasa classes were in session.
Tauri imepiga mpaka ikakuwa hata ule mtu niyekuwa na serve aliweza hata kupotea bila mimi kuweza kuelewana vile tulikuwa tunafanya na yeye. Kwa hivyo hiyo sio kitu ya kawaida.
Kuna mtoto yangu moja anasoma. Vile nimeona hakuna watoto yangu nje, akili inasunguka, nafikiri hata mtoto yako bado ishakufa. Nimeingia huko, vile nimeingia huko nimetolotolea watoto, nimesaidia watoto, nimesaidiana watoto, watu wengine anacheza hii corridor, nimemwambia tafadhalini watoto mfungulieni barabara, watoto apite, nimebitishwa.
Police cordoned off the crime scene as investigations were launched into the incident. Starehe OCPD Barasa Wabomba says the deceased was connecting and testing the device when it went off, killing him on the spot. 3 other suspects in company of the deceased escaped unhurt after the incident. The 3 reportedly took off in a white vehicle. Police have launched a manhunt for the suspect.
This room was rented recently to one person, but the owner of this building recently noticed that there are so many people entering that room. And there was communication, communication between the occupants of room 6 and the occupants of room number 9.
In Lamu, a metallic object was discovered at Independence Church in Mpeketoni, causing panic among worshippers. The object, resembling a hand grenade, was discovered under the pastor's table. Worshippers fled following reports that the metallic object was a hand grenade. The Sunday church service was cancelled even after police took custody of the object. Despite the Lamu West OCPD describing the object as a dangerous explosive, the Interior Ministry in a dispatch says the object is a harmless old bombshell. The dispatch by the Interior Ministry Communications Director described the object as totally harmless. Samogina, KTN.
Still on security, Deputy President William Ruto today joined other leaders in consoling victims of last Sunday's attack at the Joy in Jesus Church in Likoni. In Mombasa, Ruto visited the scene of the attack and assured survivors and residents that the government is closing in on the perpetrators. Benki Chili now reports.
The Joy in Jesus Christ Church in Likoni, Mombasa. The scene of a gun attack that took place exactly a week ago, where gunmen indiscriminately shot at worshippers, killing 6 and injuring many others. Despite this, churchgoers here, including some survivors of the attack, still came to church, but they are still traumatized.
Nikiona mtu amebeba bunduki nashtuka, kukiwa na kitu kikipiga kwa nguvu, mlio wa kwa nguvu, nashtuka, nina hofu yani.
Saa zingine tumekaa na kuambia mama, ati unajua mimi naogopa kwenda kanisani.
Deputy President William Ruto visited the ill-fated church Sunday to console the victims. The Deputy President also met county commissioners, county police commanders and governors of Mombasa, Kilifi and Lamu counties in a bid to find solutions to the massive insecurity in the region.
Hatuwezi tukakubali ya kwamba magaidi ama wahalifu ama wakora wazuie sisi kama watu wa taifa la Kenya kumcha Mungu ama kuendesha haki yetu ya kikatiba ya ibada.
A tough-talking Ruto confirmed that the police have gunned down 2 of the suspected terrorists and were closing in on a 3rd. More importantly, he urged residents not to be cowed and to fight radicalization of the youth.
Mimi nataka niwaambie vijana, if you engage yourself in murder, kwa mauaji kupitia hii njia ya terrorism, tutakuangaisha hapa duniani na utachomeka kule jehanamu.
Ruto announced that the government will foot funeral and hospital costs of the victims and gave 2 million shillings from the national government, while the county government of Mombasa gave 1 million shillings. However, leaders present decried the little resources allocated to security agencies.
Na sisi tunahimiza serikali kuu ya kitaifa na serikali ya county ishirikiane ihakikishe kwamba tumeleta usalama katika Mombasa na pwani nzima.
Na mimi kama Muislamu nataka ni confirm hapa. Mimi nimeenda madrasa. Hakuna siku Muislamu amefundishwa kuua. Hakuna. Kwa hiyo wale ambao wamefanya hiyo, mimi naweza kuambia hata si Waislamu, hao ni wahalifu.
The government has been told that it must put its house in order and fix the painfully porous security systems in the country. Ben Kitili, KTN.
Still on insecurity, police in Kiambu have launched a manhunt for a house help suspected to have murdered her employer. Now, the woman escaped after the killing, leaving the employer's 2-year-old son at a nearby shop.
Sad, confused and sullen is the state that Moses Mushoki has been since he arrived home at 2 in the morning. The events that took place at his house and in his absence, so traumatizing that silence and astonishment filled the air in the whole of Kiambu's Torito village. Neighbors say they had a commotion coming from the direction of Mushoki's home Saturday evening. Unsuspecting, the neighbors ignored as the commotion ensued. A couple of hours later, Mushoki returned home, perhaps expecting to be received warmly by his wife, only to find her lying on the floor, dead. The wounds on her body depicted that she had been stabbed in the head and neck. It also strongly suspected that the murder had been executed by the lawyer's family house help, whose bloody clothes were found hidden in the toilet and their 2-year-old child missing.
Hizo bedroom zingine zilikuwa hazina mtu, lakini kuna matone ya damu kila pahali, na pia unaona kulikuwa na mtu alikuwa anatembea, kuna footprints za pia ziko na hiyo damu.
After hours of searching, the 2-year-old was found at a shop where the house help is said to have left him after ordering a soft drink for him.
Huyo house girl amekuwa hapa kwa muda wa takriban wiki 3 hivi. Bibi yangu aliniambia alikuwa ametumiwa na mama mwingine rafiki yake. So sio mtu mimi mwenyewe namjua.
Employers of maids or other house helps, they should be able to have the contacts or rather the home addresses of these people whom they are employing. Like this one is only known by only one name, Grace.
The whereabouts of the house help are still unknown as neighbors, family and friends visited Mushoki's home to offer condolences. Ian Wafula, KTN Weekend Prime.
Well, we'll be revisiting the issue of security later on Checkpoint. Feel free to send us your thoughts on that and we'll sample them later to our Twitter handle at KTN Kenya. Right now, though, let's shift gears to health. And you remember a week ago, baby Satrin's plight really did move the nation. His mother had been shot dead and a bullet was lodged in his brain. Citizens mobilized resources to get him the best healthcare in Nairobi, but there are other patients in similar situations who simply cannot afford specialized treatment. So tonight we're asking, how can the government ensure quality healthcare is not the preserve of just a few Kenyans?
Doctors at Kenyatta National Hospital are racking their brains trying to figure out the best course of treatment for baby Satrin Osinya. Satrin's mother died last Sunday when gunmen attacked the church she and her children were attending. The bullet that pierced her body exited and is now lodged in her son Satrin's brain. The sight of baby Satrin melted the hearts of millions of Kenyans, and within days, arrangements had been made to airlift Satrin and his father to Nairobi for specialized treatment. He is now on medication as a team of 12 neurosurgeons deliberates on the next course of action. His story has served to highlight the gaping holes in the healthcare provision in the country. His tale very different from those of others in similar situations. In Maho, Taita Taveta, a family wonders what the future holds. Their 3-year-old daughter was born without a proper anal path. Her parents sought medical assistance at Loitoktok District Hospital, which referred them to Kenyatta National Hospital. But her father, a casual laborer, could not raise the 15,000 shillings required to fuel the vehicle to transport the child to the country's largest referral facility. They are still waiting for medical assistance.
Tukaja tukakaa tukaona sasa uwezo wetu ni mdogo, tukaja tukafifia, tukasema anyway, wacha sasa, maana hapo tumefika ndio mwisho yetu, hatuna uwezo mwingine.
So what ails the healthcare sector? The Kenya Medical Association points out that since independence, over 8,000 doctors have been registered. Of these, over 2,000 have died, retired, or sought greener pastures, meaning there are currently about 6,000 practicing doctors. And out of these, only an estimated 2,000 are in public service, serving 42 million Kenyans. When it comes to neurosurgeons, the country has 16. 13 are located in Nairobi, with 1 in Eldoret. The neurosurgeon in Mombasa is a retired army surgeon, and there is only 1 pediatric surgeon in the country.
Even in that small number that we have, we still have a skewed distribution, so that you get that in the urban centers, we tend to have a higher number of people as opposed to the rural settings, where perhaps there's most of the need.
As it rolled out the devolved system of government, the country posted medical practitioners to various counties. But this may not be the solution to the problem.
You'll find that a lot of public facilities have nothing to write home about. So you be highly trained, you're posted there, but you cannot work.
And the country's most prominent public hospital, Kenyatta National Hospital, is so overwhelmed by the patients referred to it. A 2012 study showed that on average, it took cancer patients 9 months to get their first treatment there. Healthcare practitioners now say the solution lies in a 3-pronged approach: equipping hospitals, training more medical practitioners, and deploying them to hospitals across the country. Only then can children such as baby Satrin receive help wherever and whenever they need it most. Wilkis Anyabwa, KTN.
Elsewhere, villages have been displaced, schools have been closed, tourism establishments have been submerged in water, and wild animals have had to adapt to new surroundings. Well, some of the effects that the rise in water levels in several Rift Valley lakes has caused. But what is causing the rise in water levels? Rita Tinina reports on the theories from the experts and what they are warning of worse times ahead.
From Lake Nakuru, Lake Baringo to Lake Bogoria, a phenomena that is still puzzling experts and locals alike has left several lakes in the Rift Valley flooded. Perhaps the worst affected is Baringo County. The flooding of Lake Baringo and Lake Bogoria has left several tourist facilities such as the Lake Baringo Reptile Park, Roberts Camp, and the Lake Baringo Club submerged in water. Sections of the Lake Bogoria National Reserve remain inaccessible.
Lake volume used to be 32 kilometers square, but currently it's around 41. So there's an increment of around 8 kilometers square.
The famous hot springs and geysers of Lake Bogoria have not been spared. More than 50% of the hot springs that have for years been a major tourist attraction have been submerged.
But still you can access the springs at a point called Mawe Moto, which is a distance of around 18 kilometers from the main gate.
But it is not only the tourism industry that is feeling the effects of the rise in water levels in the Rift Valley lakes. More than 1,000 households have been displaced from their homes in Baringo. Several schools have been submerged in water.
Imaji bado sijaona hata siku nyingine. Tangu maisha tukae hapa ama tunaishi hapa. Sasa hii majirani yangu yote tulikuwa tunaishi hapa, hawa yote wamehama. Ako huko kwa milima, wengine wameishi kwa senda, wengine wameishi upande hii Kaprongono.
The Baringo County government has had to step in to help families move to higher ground.
We also want to treat it as a disaster as a county, so that special votes can be planned to mitigate and to support people who are affected.
At the Lake Nakuru National Park, the water levels, which have been rising by the day, have flooded sections of the park and forced the Kenya Wildlife Service to relocate the main gate into the park. Several sections of the park remain inaccessible. But just what is causing the rise in water levels in the Rift Valley lakes? Experts say it could be a cyclic occurrence that has been witnessed every half a century.
They did this in 1901. This is very well documented by one Sir Harris Johnson, who was an explorer in this area. From the records of the Kenya Meteorological Department, rainfall records, they show that during 1961, 1962, 63, there was an increased amount of rainfall more on the western side of the rift.
But that is not the only theory, even among the experts.
Some could be as a result of the movement of the Congo air mass. Some could be as a result of the movement of the intertropical convergence zone.
There are fears that the situation could get worse with the onset of the rainy season. The rise in water levels has been gradual, and experts say it will take some time before life can revert back to normal in the affected areas.
If the water has been filling the basin for the last 4 years, then definitely we expect the water to go back in another 4 years. So we are talking of a flooded zone for a minimum of 8 years.
As experts try to solve the puzzle of the rising Rift Valley lakes, players in the tourism industry in the affected areas will continue counting their losses as locals adapt to nature's latest twist. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Court lieutenants have endorsed former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka for the 2017 presidential race. The leaders drawn from Ford Kenya and ODM say they will support Kalonzo's candidature as a flag bearer, and it is a declaration that complicates arithmetics in the coalition, with Ford Kenya leader Moses Wetangula declaring he plans to vie for the presidency in 2017 under CORD, while Raila Odinga has not shown any indications of resigning from politics.
Kilome MP Regina Ndambuki's homecoming turned into a political hotbed for the 2017 succession politics. Never mind the 3-year time difference, CORD is laying groundwork to make amends for its 2014 presidential loss. And the coalition lieutenants are reorganizing their house, this time picking on its number 2, Kalonzo Musyoka, as its preferred flag bearer come 2017 polls.
Mheshimiwa Kalonzo amekuwa kwangu 2 weeks ago, akajionea ya kwamba tuko tayari kumpeleka mbele awe president wa nchi. Kwani ubaya?
Kama jamii ya Wakamba hatuna wakati wa kujenga kiongozi mwingine kumpeana kwa wananchi akubaliwe asubuhi kama Kalonzo.
We are a people who believe that this country belongs to all of us. And when the time comes, we shall reciprocate.
The succession drumbeat set off by Ford Kenya legislature, Ferdinand Wanyonyi. The party under the leadership of Moses Wetangula being a principal partner in the CORD coalition. Seconding the endorsement is a close Raila ally Opiyo Wandayi. But in rubber stamping for a Kalonzo candidature, the Kilome declaration complicates the matrix in CORD coalition, given that Ford Kenya leader has declared his interest in vying for the presidency in CORD, while CORD leader Raila Odinga has not indicated relinquishing his presidential ambitions.
Vile mmeambiwa ni ya kwamba hawa vijana tuwapewa kazi imewashinda.
The contribution of His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka to the reformation of this country's politics. Na sisi kama watu wa Nyanza tunamwamini Kalonzo sio kiongozi tu wa Ukambani. Kalonzo ni kiongozi wa nchi kwa jumla.
To counter the Jubilee tyranny of numbers that dealt CORD defeat in the presidential elections, CORD leaders are rallying their troops to register for identification cards and subsequently voter registration cards.
Na vijana wote, kila mtu ana kadi. Kipande, mchukue kipande kwa sababu huwezi kupiga kura. Ndio sisi wote 2017 tuwe na kura inatosha.
Twaomba tuwasi, tukianza mwanze kuchukua ID zenu kwa sababu bila by numbers, pia kuwa na watu wa kupiga kura, jameni, hatuwezi kufika.
Kalonzo, who attended the function, steered clear the succession politics and his endorsement, instead picking a fight with the Jubilee administration for failing to deliver on its promises.
Na sisi hatuna ubaya, lakini ukiangalia mwaka mmoja wa Jubilee, hatuwezi kukubali mwaka mwingine kama aina hii. Ikiwa ni wizi wa laptop computer, anaahidi watoto, kila mtoto atapata laptop. Wangapi wameipata? Hata walimu wenyewe hawajapata ability.
Samogina, KTN.
So yesterday we had a corpse which refused to get buried, and today residents of Nyalenda Estate in Kisumu County were treated to dramatic scenes when a mother-in-law rejected the body of her daughter-in-law, which had been transported for burial in the homestead. Now the woman claimed the deceased had failed to attend her husband's funeral and therefore did not deserve to be buried next to his grave.
The delegation that arrived to bury the dead woman did not receive a warm welcome when it arrived in Nyalenda, Kisumu. Instead, drama broke out. The owner of the homestead, the mother-in-law of the deceased woman, refused to allow the mourners to bury the body in the homestead.
Wakati nilikuwa ninakunywa pombe, nikasikia sauti. Na hiyo sauti nikitoka nje nikaona kama wanapeleka maiti. Ilikuwa tuktuk moja na wapikipiki tatu. Tukaamua maiti wametoka wapi? Na kwa ni wapi? Tukaamua tumrudishie hiyo maiti kwao.
The mother-in-law claimed that the dead woman had failed to attend the funeral of her husband, who died recently, and therefore did not deserve to be buried next to him. She suggested that the mourners make their way to another family plot located 3 kilometers away from her home.
Mtoto yake hapa juzi hata hajaisha mwezi saa hii amekufa, alafu mama anasema tunapeleka Vigwa tupeleke wapi? Na nyumba yake ndio hii. Sababu gani? Vile alizika mtoto yake na alikuwa bibi ya kijana yake, achukue huyo mama kama bibi ya kijana yake. Hakuna chenye tutafanyia, lakini ataona tu na uso, ataona na uso. Achukue bibi ya kijana yake.
And when the locals insisted on fulfilling their mission in the homestead, the mother-in-law chased them all off, carrying away the tools meant to dig the grave. At the time of our departure, the standoff over where to bury the deceased was yet to be resolved. Wilkisanyabwa, KTN.
Mandera County government has hailed devolution as a silver bullet that will save marginalized regions from perpetual and development. Speaking during celebrations to mark the first anniversary since the advent of the new governance system and structures, Governor Ali Roba and other officials pointed out significant areas of progress that have transformed the county. Fred Omulo brings us a story.
Mandera County has been the hub of all that is wrong with Kenya since independence. The remote region has experienced negligible interest from successive regimes since Kenya attained independence in 1963, leading to one of the worst indicators in poverty, health, education, security, and infrastructure. But not anymore. This year's celebration of devolution served as a platform to reflect on the progress made so far.
For the first time since independence, we feel we are part of this great country called Kenya.
We are in a position where we can plan for our water, we can plan for our security, we can plan for our roads, and we can plan for everything under the sun in this county.
Significant areas of progress include education, where enrollment rates in academic institutions have shot up to an all-time high at all levels, with adults leading the rush for knowledge. Mandera has also seen a coordinated effort to build dams and sink boreholes that serve as watering holes for livestock, a recurrent source of conflict that kept communities at war.
Katiba imetufaidisha sisi watu wa Mandera. Miaka 50 tulikuwa nyuma sana.
na sasa ndio tunaona kweli sisi ndio wana Kenya, si hivyo? Kwa sababu ugatuzi miaka moja peke yake tunaona mabadiliko.
Mandera town is more peaceful than Nairobi if we were statistically look at all the variables of insecurity. We became the first county to have decisively responded to insecurity and turned it around within a short time.
The county has had more than 100 reservists to boost security, with reduced terrorist attacks evident, and allocated 500 million shillings for better healthcare. Plans are now underway to introduce large-scale irrigation for the production of horticultural crops in the vast county. With a population of 1 million residents, the county has a huge human resource base that, if intelligently deployed, can transform it into one of the most successful in the country. Reporting for KTN, I am Fredo Mulo.
Security, or rather insecurity, has been at the lips, if not the minds of many Kenyans this week. 6 people lost their lives at the hands of unknown gunmen exactly 7 days ago at the Joy in Jesus Church in Likoni. Since then, government has flooded us with tough rhetoric, beginning, of course, with the Deputy IG Samuel Arachi, who just a day after the attack had this to say.
We've gotten leads so far, very good leads. And we believe possibly even before the end of the day, we may have people who are directly involved in this in custody.
Well, it's been 7 days since a church shooting, and just as was the case last Sunday, Kenyans once again woke up to news that yet another church could have been the target of sorts after a hand grenade was found inside it in Peketoni. The safety pin was not on the grenade, according to some reports, and I think we all know what that means, assuming, of course, that it was a grenade. There are conflicting reports on this. Then there is, of course, the incident that we aired earlier from Pangani, where one person died in the process of what police say was putting an explosive together. Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku has been oddly quiet, and the one time he broke his silence, it was in a written statement. In the statement, it would appear that he was more concerned with the state of refugees in the country, saying that all refugees in Kenya should move back to Kakma and Dadaab refugee camps. It was not until the third and final paragraph that Lenku gave government's plan for security. The state would be sending an additional 500 police officers to Mombasa, Nairobi, and what was vaguely referred to as other environs. And the assurance that over 100 people had been arrested in connection to the 6 deaths in Likoni. Now, 49 of those arrested were released after being charged with idling. But to further prove a point, Lenku made a surprise visit to the Central Business District in Nairobi at midnight. And listen to what he had to say about the state of security.
Okay. Kwa hivyo unataka kuhakikisha na pia waonyeshe wananchi kwamba iko safe kweli. Iko safe. Iko safe. Kabisa.
Now, of course, the CS has received a lot of flack for his comment, accused by some quarters of being disconnected and even offensive, seeing as he was followed by several bodyguards as he made the comment. But the icing on the cake, this must have come from Mombasa County Commissioner Nelson Marwa, who had this to say about criminals and perpetrators of crime.
Wale si watu wa kushikwa wamepatikana ndiye huyu ako na hiyo bunduki. Mariza yeye hapo. Anapelekwa kotini kufanya nini na ameua watu 6? What justice is there? You have killed 6 people. You have been arrested, unapelekwa kotini. Who is going to be your witness in court? Na uyuri umeua, utamfufua aende kuwa witness wako kotini? No, let's be very fair here. We must be fair here. Akipatikana, tunamumaliza on the spot.
Now, the Inspector General of Police, David Kimayo, has since dismissed the statement, but the events of this week have triggered several questions regarding the security of post-Westgate Kenya, including the efficacy of our intelligence and security personnel. Here to discuss these very issues on Checkpoint, I'm joined by Mwenda Njoka, who is a spokesperson for the Ministry of Interior, Mwenda Mbijiwe, who is very well known here, popular visitor at KTN, he's a security consultant, and Jonathan Lee Hamaka, who I understand is also called Kinodhia. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Wanda, let's begin with you. Government has been on the spot this week, and there's some quarters who say that we are attacking you fairly, we being the members of the public. Do you think this is true?
Absolutely not. From the intro you've given, clearly you've not mentioned the fact that the IEDs that were discovered in Mombasa, that is a big achievement, because that stuff, if it got where it was supposed to get, and it was got because our security forces were alert and they acted in good time.
All right.
That is besides that, also let me correct you also on the grenade, that the supposed grenade that is said to have been discovered in Pangani. The actual thing is that it wasn't a grenade. It was a bombshell from an old bombshell that had exploded. I don't know why somebody put it there.
Wanda, your office is the one which is saying that it was an old bombshell, but the OCPD of Lamu West is saying that it was definitely a grenade. So who do we listen to? Because one of the problems that has been cited with security is the many channels of communication that are in the security sector.
Okay, what's happening again also when you have a situation where you don't have centralized channels of communication with the government, with the way the government is set up, with the decentralization of government systems, where you have a situation where you have so many voices, and as a result of that, you end up having confusion. That is a fact. But the truth of the matter, the information we have from down there, is that this was a bombshell that was harmless.
All right. It's interesting you should say that, because when I ask people to tweet us, Ken Korir immediately says Olelenko and Kimayo are more interested in PR than fighting security. What do you think of that, Mbijue?
I'll be very fair, but at the same time also be very frank. I think before Westgate, our understanding of security and how government did security was significantly different than it is after Westgate.
When you say different, do you mean better?
To a large extent, a little bit better. On a scale of 1 to 10, before Westgate, I would give government 2.5. After Westgate, I would give them 3 out of 10.
Njoka, what do you think of that? I mean, you're being graded here and you're being told that you're not doing a good job.
Okay, actually, what has happened also, it's good to appreciate. There are a lot of efforts that the government is making to improve security. It is a fact that there are serious challenges. One of the key problems that we have is that for the last 20 years, the security sector has been neglected. And it takes an event or an occurrence like Westgate to give people a wake-up call. And
what about the 1998 bombings? Wasn't that an event that should have awakened?
That was an event, but I'll give you also an example. America has had, some countries have also had 1 or 2 incidents after the other, and you still keep improving. There is no place where you have 100%. But we have had some lessons we've learned from Westgate, and I can tell you confidently that right now there are many initiatives that are being put in place.
But talking about 98, because you brought it up, I don't really think government learned anything from 98. We thought that was a U.S. Embassy problem. It didn't concern us. I was in the Air Force that time, and that first night we spent our entire night with my colleagues at the Air Force rescuing people, and we had nothing. I mean, we had no equipment to work with. We just depended on bare hands. It took about 2 days for the Israelis to arrive with sniffer dogs. We had dogs at the Air Force, and there are many dogs all over the country, but our dogs were not trained to sniff life, you know? Okay. So we had to get the rescue of the Israelis coming. So I don't think after 98 we learned anything, and I really hope after Westgate we won't come back here 16 years later and just pass the same verdict like I'm passing, that after Westgate we learned nothing. I hope we can learn something this time.
Jonathan, I'd like to bring you in at this point. There's been a lot of American stuff being thrown in. You're American. You've worked for the American Marines or Naval Service?
Air Force.
The U.S. Air Force. Looking at this as a security consultant with foreign eyes, do you think we're doing the right thing as Kenyans in terms of our security?
Yeah, I think the government is doing very many high-level operations that the Kenyan people are not aware of, that are keeping you safe on a daily basis. If there was no security in government, as you're suggesting, you would see hundreds of terrorist attacks on a daily basis. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But this is the case anywhere in the world. And I think one of the best recommendations to improve security is to do real-life threat analysis. So you would have a real-life scenario where terrorists have taken over a mall or a church, and then you would have your team respond. You could determine the effectiveness of the response, the timeliness of the response, and by doing such activities, you can make yourself far better prepared to combat terrorism.
And when you look at the Kenyan security forces, how would you grade them? As Mbijure has said, he would probably give them a 3. What would you give them?
I haven't been here long enough, I don't think, to observe. My family is Kenyan, so I understand the issues at hand, but I couldn't give you a grade at this time because I haven't studied them in detail enough to make such a guess.
All right, Njoka, I just want to throw some figures for you. In 2012, Kenya was rated as one of the countries with the highest murder rates per 100,000 inhabitants. It was said that for every 20 deaths, for every 100,000 inhabitants, 20 deaths occurred because of murder. This is from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Then there is a crime index by various organizations which seems to suggest, and this is from 2014, that Kenya has one of the lowest crime indexes in the world, 4th only to Afghanistan, Venezuela, and Guatemala. So when we see the CS walking the streets and telling us that we are safe, and figures, facts are showing us that we're not, how are we supposed to believe him?
Okay, let me first explain the issue of CS walking in the streets. Definitely, you don't expect him to walk without security. It's a practice everywhere, and whether the streets are safe or not, that is not an issue. But
what do you mean that's not an issue? That's what he said.
What I'm saying is that, you're implying that you shouldn't have security if you think the streets are safe. Even in the street, and there is nowhere in the world that you have ministers or presidents walking in the streets just because the streets are safe. That's what I'm saying.
But do you think him walking in the streets with or without bodyguards was enough for him to quantify whether or not Nairobi
the message
was
here
safe?
is that he was leading from the front. There was an operation that was taking place, and he was part of that operation. That is what. And the question he was asked is whether the country is safe, and he said it is safe from a point of. If you go with the figures and what the information that we have right now, like for instance, between February and March 15, we had the time we launched what we call RRI, which is a Rapid Response Initiative. We've had about 7,000 cases of 7,000 criminals arrested in various parts of the country. Yet, those incidents are not reported by the media. What the media looks at is the negative. 1 or 2, 3 cases are reported, and they are given very high prominence to create that creates the impression that the country is completely
But Mwenda, come on. I mean, in all honesty, the RRI, fine. Some critics might say it was a good initiative. Others might say it has its loopholes. But do you really expect the media to constantly applaud and laud the government and the security forces for what they're meant to do anyway? It's their job to make these arrests.
Absolutely.
Let me help my namesake here. I really wish that Ole Lenku on that night showed up on site, dressed up in some serious combat, dressing. Maybe the police would have given him a combat jacket and, some helmet. And the bodyguards around him, they could remove these guys with the suits and bring the police with their guns or rungus. We would believe he was under escort and in a security situation. I think Honorable Lenku's advisors need to tell him that when you're doing security, he's too nice for security. He presents a very kind person to security. One time I appeared on a TV show talking about security and I was smiling all the time. And the bashing I got online was, that guy is not serious, he's smiling too much. But Lenku is too nice for security, his face. We need him to put on a more serious face than that. And of course,
but he could have the most serious face in the world and still not deliver on what he is talking about.
That's why I'm saying on the street he should have been on a combat dress, not on a suit. That's why people didn't take him seriously.
I'm really not buying your argument.
Let me interject.
It's not convincing. Let's go back to Joker.
I was trying to help my
we'll take that advice and see what happens in the next. Okay. But for the time being, actually the minister has been on record saying that from now on he's not going to be talking about security, he's going to be seen acting. And that is one of the things that he's been doing.
Actually, Kenyans hoped that Lenku being a Maasai, we would see a Moran Rio doing security. And the way Moran do this thing. So hope somebody can advise him.
I'm just going to ignore that last statement. But Jonathan, let's just come back to you. There's an issue that has been raised in Kenya about, the link between Kenya's involvement in Somalia and the surge in criminal activities and, of course, terrorist activities in Kenya. Is this a real threat to nations that have, for lack of a better word, intervened in other nations?
It is absolutely a real threat. Anytime you try to combat terrorists on any level, especially when you go after where they live, they're going to retaliate. They are here, they're living among you, And it's not the ones you know about that you need to be concerned. It's the ones you don't know about. And you need to hit these guys where they live. Go after them. Kenya is doing the absolute right thing by going to Somalia, by chasing them down in the streets here. But you need to take this a step further. You need to seize their bank accounts. You need to have drones on the borders for surveillance. When people are coming into your country, you need to thoroughly check them. If you don't have a good reason for entering Kenya, you don't come in. So there are additional steps that I think can be taken to help combat this issue of terrorism.
All right, let's take a breather there, and let me just read some of the tweets that are coming in. Someone says, Denmark ministers go to work on bicycles without security. What is Njoka talking about at KTN Kenya? That's Jay Mole. We hope that Njoka is going to respond to that. Somebody else says, the government has failed. There has been a lot of rhetoric and no action. The Mombasa arson has stayed, rather the Mombasa car, I think that's what you were talking about, has stayed with the policeman for over 1 week. And then there was somebody who had said that the only word he can use to describe the Kenyan security situation is a joke. Njoka, this is the ministry you're representing, which is being touted as being a joke.
It isn't a joke. If it was a joke, this country would be...
So, okay, fine. Tell us, earlier on you had said, let me give you the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely. Earlier on you said that Lenku says he does not want to be seen speaking, he wants to be seen acting. Yeah. Can you please tell us what he has been doing?
There are very many initiatives that are in place. And as Jonathan has mentioned here, some of the investments that you need to make to deal with the threat of issues like terrorism are not just, it is not conventional warfare. It's not a warfare that you can see the enemy and you can see the enemy is there dressed in this or that uniform. The enemy is within. We've had initiatives like something like Nyumba Kumi is an initiative that was initiated during when Lenku came in place. And it is an initiative that, given support from Kenyans, is going to bear good fruits. Yeah. Then we have investments that are being made by the government. Not too long ago, the government gave out 1,200 vehicles for police, which were distributed in various police centers. That, again, is part of the initiative. Mm-hmm. You may not feel those initiatives because of the underinvestment that has been placed in the security sector for the last 20 years. That's what we are suffering for right now.
When you talk about underinvestment, do you say the Treasury is not giving the security personnel and generally security as a whole? And
I'll start even. Let's even start with the policeman on the beat. If you pay your policemen poorly, if you don't house them properly, clearly you are setting yourself for the fail. That has been the problem for the last several years. Right now we have projects for police housing. We have projects for modernization of police. We have projects for modernization of communications equipment and systems. But some of them we are also being challenged because you are under tender. You have all manner of problems from courts and from the business community, and you end up not being able to implement what you're supposed to. The reason being the kind of laws that we have. We have very complex procurement laws. Sometimes it's like they're meant not to make government do its work.
Bijiwe, Njoka is trying to give us a link between the economics of the macroeconomics and how it affects security. Policemen, of course, being given good pay, as he's talking about, but then there's someone who suggested that iniquities also create room for crime. Do you think Kenya is effectively dealing with unemployment, corruption, in order to get rid of insecurity?
I think the whole foundation of insecurity, especially in most third world nations, is, among other things, socioeconomic problems like lack of employment, lots of youths being out there on the streets without jobs, and when you sleep 2-3 times without food, and the gentleman across the street has food. We hear somebody that was robbed in Karen the other day. Mm-hmm. The guys who were robbing him said, "You can't, eat food and have enough for your pets when my children are sleeping hungry. That's why I'm coming for you." So I think there should be let me call it a holistic approach to fighting insecurity, in the sense that we try to build our economy, we try to get more youth working out there, create more jobs for the youth. And this is a challenge that the Jubilee government said they'll be creating, like 1 million jobs every year. But then the president shortly qualified that by saying this was not only essentially a government thing, it also government would create the environment, and then the private sector would create more jobs. And so I think it's a holistic thing.
So do you think then Njoka's ministry, rather the ministry that you work for, which is the Interior Ministry, should also now start looking into employment?
Really, it's unfortunate that Njoka's ministry, as you said, has to take the buck has to stop with them. But if we were fair as Kenyans, we know that the problem of insecurity is much deeper than hitting at our security minister and this office. Our problems are much larger and deeper, and that's why one of my suggestions earlier said, I think we also need to involve the county governments in this issue of resolving our socioeconomic problems, because they are always the basis and the foundation of the insecurity that is around our country. Hardly do you find insecurity among people that have have jobs, or people that are living well with their families. The rate of crime goes considerably low.
All right. Jonathan, you're in a country, America is ranked 4th in terms of iniquities, and we know that there's quite a number of people who are incarcerated in the United States of America. Looking at the situation with foreign eyes, do you think that will be enough to reduce the rate of crime in the country?
It's a difficult thing when you look at this matter of crime in any country in particular. Not only do people need jobs, but on the reverse side, simply incarcerating people because they've committed a crime without going to the root cause of all the issues will never solve the problem. So I think specifically in Kenya, from what I've seen in all the places I've traveled, if there could be better initiatives as to helping young men and women gain jobs, it would significantly lower crime. And I don't think simply arresting them is a viable solution.
Mwenda, we have seen a lot of arrests from Likoni and Nairobi. Some people are claiming that those are arbitrary arrests. Have you been able to, first of all, get the people who are behind Likoni? Because there's confusion as to whether or not they were really gunned down or whether the suspects are still roaming, if there has been any indication of...
Okay, I was in Mombasa last week with the cabinet secretary, and one of the things actually immediately after the Likoni incident, and one of the things that came out is that among the suspects that were arrested, there is enough evidence to indicate that suspects are among them. But as of now, I can't say 100% whether that is so until they are charged in court, because again, it's an active investigation.
And when do Kenyans find out? Because we're still waiting to find out what happened with Westgate, who was responsible, where these people are, how many they were.
Westgate was the Al-Shabaab. They left their calling card, so I believe that is. And seriously, the issue of fighting, especially when it comes to terrorism, is a very complex business. And it comes very different. It's complex, and the enemy changes all the time. So you have to keep on also changing your tactics. Some of the issues, some of the things that you find or our security agents find, they may not be able to discuss them in public or even tell the media we've done this or we are doing this and this. And
so investigations are underway. It's important that you've mentioned that terrorism is becoming dynamic, and my question to you is, how does government discern when an incident is an act of terror as opposed to an act of crime? Because in Likoni you were very specific. Officials said that this is an act of crime and not of terror.
Okay, let me put it this way. Like the Likoni incident, later information indicated actually it may have been even in a terrorist act, an act of terrorism. But as of now, again, the way we communicate, the way sometimes you don't want to give certain information, it may lead to public panic. It was coming almost immediately after the incident of IEDs the incidents of IEDs in Mombasa. There are all those dynamics that we don't, even as we communicate in the, especially in the security sector, it's very critical that we don't send out information that creates public panic.
All right, Mbijiwe, we have seen an upsurge in the use of improvised explosive devices and the readiness to use them on unarmed civilians. As a person who has been on the ground working for the Air Force, how do you think the Kenyan security forces, the policemen on the ground, can deal with this? Because, I mean, in May of last year, we saw a person use an IED, create an IED using fertilizer, readily available stuff which cannot be standardized.
I think our solution to that would be public awareness programs, and that's why I hail the Nyumba Kumi initiative. We have a lot of veterans from the military, from the police, living among our communities. Nyumba Kumi should find a way to use them. And I had a talk the other day.
Do you think Nyumba Kumi will work, honestly?
Yes, I had a talk with the chairman the other day. I think if my namesake here could go back to his office and ask them to really fund that project, I think the project is, the initiative is ideal. It would solve our problems. The issue would be if we pump in money. What happened in the United States, and Amaka is here to confirm that, is after 9/11, they realized this is a real problem we have to solve. Apart from all the monies that they costed them, they pumped in money into public awareness programs. They created, for example, the early warning system, terror warning system, and rolled out some colors, and everybody in the country was educated on what those colors mean. I've been in several United States airports, in the past, and you see colors displayed everywhere, and almost every US citizen now knows if it's a red, if it's a yellow, if it's a green, this is what it means. If Nyumba Kumi could get enough funding, I am of the belief that Nyumba Kumi can help solve our problems. The people in Karen know this now. After they got several incidences of insecurity in Karen, they all gathered, and I was impressed to see all those people who live in Karen. We think it's an estate for the rich. All those people forgetting about their wealth and coming together and saying, gentlemen, we have a problem, let's fix it. And they said, Nyumba Kumi is one of the things that we roll here to fix our problems. Number two, as we come together to work on the Nyumba Kumi thing, we should engage and train the public. The time when we used to hide issues from the public. The other day, we wrote to the IG when he was the police commissioner to get the permit to go and train the public on counterterrorism. And we've been doing this in churches. Just today, I came from Machakos Redeemed Gospel Church, invited by their bishop, Dr. Mutua, to discuss this with the church.
Yeah.
People are taking this seriously, but if we do not train the public, it's time we take those grenades from the armories and go and show the public.
Train the public. You think Nyumba Kumi will work with more involved
more involved action? We should get every civilian involved in our national security, and the IDs, for example, the one they found in Eastleigh, we should be able to go out there, carry IDs, say, if you see this, someone with fertilizer, someone trying to buy sulfuric acid, someone buying ball bearings or getting nails and breaking bottles, they are trying to make an ID.
I'm being asked to wind up, but Jonathan, I do have to ask, it appears that the Kenyan security forces are dealing with fluid and amorphous perpetrators. They seem to walk in and go out through the wind. How can Kenyans who have displayed lack of faith with security forces then come out and give this information of this same perpetrators who we are told are our neighbors and are our friends?
It's equally important on two levels, that when the public notices a lapse in security or a believed lapse, that they report it, and then equally important that the government responds. If, for example, in America, you call in a terrorist threat, within probably literally 5 minutes, you'll have 100 police, FBI, and other agencies respond on site to check out this complaint. So you have to get to that level here, and it's difficult with everything that you're facing, the budget constraints, additional trainings that are needed, but this is a level of security you must reach.
All right, and as we wind up, Mwenda Njoka, when the Cabinet Secretary for Interior was at KTN speaking to Yvonne Okwara not too long ago, about 2 months ago, as he was launching RRI, he did say that from this day, and I'm quoting him, the game will change.
Yeah.
From this day, the game will change. What has changed since 2 months ago?
Okay, what has changed is the gains that I was mentioning about, like the arrest of those suspects who had IEDs in Mombasa. There have been the arrest of those IEDs and the suspects in Mombasa. There have been also cases where we've arrested quite a number, even of terror suspects. Actually, 129 as of about 15 days ago. We had about 129 terror suspects who were arrested, and they are going to face charges. And we are following up.
Have they been arraigned in court yet?
Not yet. They were arrested, but they are going to be appearing in court. And then besides that, let me just point out something about issues of security. You find the security agents or security agencies have to be 100% correct all the time. Whereas on the people we are dealing with, our clients, if you call them so, have to be correct only 1%, and they wipe out our 100%. That is unfortunate.
It's a good argument, Mwenda Njoka, but there's a reason why you're employed to be in that seat. There's a reason why the CS is where he is. I'm really appreciating all the comments and the views that you're sending to us on KTN Kenya. Do keep them coming. Unfortunately, this is where we have to wind up this edition of Checkpoint, but the conversation goes on social media. We take a short commercial break. When we come back, we do have the sports with Lee Mashira.
FIFA Secretary General Jerome Valcke has warned Brazil that time is flying towards the World Cup, and getting 3 stadiums finished at the last minute presents risks with insufficient time to test the venues.
Jerome Valcke, responsible for ensuring Brazil's ready in 11 weeks, met this week in Rio de Janeiro with organizing committee officials. Wrapping up the visit on Thursday, he assured the stadiums in Curitiba, Cuiabá and Sao Paulo will be ready when the World Cup opens on June 12th in Sao Paulo. Despite Brazil being aware of the magnitude of the games, much of the work in Brazil have been slowed down by disputes over who pays for what between FIFA, local clubs of various levels of government. Another worrying trend in the country is the numerous protests against the World Cup 3 months ahead of the start of football's showpiece event in Brazil, owing to deaths of workers and poor pay. Valcke said a 4th stadium already opened in Porto Alegre could be the most worrisome. He said Brazilian club Internacional and the local government settled a long-standing dispute about how to pay for temporary facilities, though no work had begun for the television compound, security, media and hospitality areas. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
And that's all we had for you in tonight's edition of KTN Weekend Sports. I'm Lynn Washira. I'll take you to Edith now to wrap up the bulletin. Back to Edith.
Well, thank you, Lynn Washira, and that's exactly what I'm about to do, wrap up this edition of KTN Weekend Prime. We're glad you tuned in with us the entire week, right through to tonight. We hope that you'll stay with KTN tomorrow as we continue to bring you the authoritative news like only we can. I'm Edith Kimani, and from our sign language interpreter, Naresha Awiti, good night.